Hello, everyone. How you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today we're here to talk about The Thing, 1982, and The Thing, 2011. Both things,
The thing and the thing.
The Thing and The Thing. Um, and yeah, um, Evan, it is one of your favorite movies of all time, is it not? The Thing.
Yes, it is. I think I wouldn't put it any lower than in my top 10. It's my go-to horror movie, and it is like it's the one I've rewatched the most. And I it of all the horror movies I've seen, it has what I love seeing in movies. It's my like favorite type of movie to see, one that's like character oriented and like we'll get into it when we start going into details, but people always like are asking for like a horror movie where the characters are smart. It's like, why is everyone an idiot in horror movies? And the villain only wins because like they walked into the door, like to the room and got killed off. Like it's this is a movie where you have a very smart you have a very smart villain and you also have very smart main characters. It's like
Yeah.
it's an exercise in intelligence is this movie and its plot.
Yeah, the main thing for me this movie is just that everyone acts so smart and you're just like trying to outthink the movie and you try to keep up with it, and it's like it's what keeps you so engaged because you're like trying to pick up on clues and the movie's just as smart as you are, so you're like, oh, like you don't know where the movie's gonna go because you don't know, because you're not expecting the characters to do anything dumb, so you're like, ooh, what are they gonna do next? And you just think of something that's very smart, like, ooh, that's good. Unlike the new one, yeah, the new one, the character's a little
Well,
dumber. Just that.
yeah, we'll get into comparisons, but man, one of my favorite parts of this movie is the premise. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because something like retrospectively to look back on for this movie and to appreciate is that they've never had sequels or prequels or like other than the 2011, there hasn't really been an attempt to franchise this, and it's because you can't. Like for one, you'd ruin the ending if you made a sequel to the thing, and
Oh yeah.
for two, it like so much of this movie relies on its very specific premise where it's like this is an alien that could just if it landed in any city it would just be able to take over the world. There'd be no stopping. If there'd be too many people around, it would assimilate and it would just replace everyone over time.
Yeah,
But it
which is
happened by
what I
miracle to
love. Which is what I love about the characters. Like, they put the well-being of the world over like their own well-being. Well, not all of them. To be fair, some of them don't do that, but most of them. And that's what I find so interesting, especially the what's his name? The guy who
Blair, the,
ends up
the
attacking
doctor.
everything with the axe and everything.
Yeah, that's Blair.
Blair, yeah. I'm not great with names, so. But yeah,
I'm
he's just like,
more
oh, it's
great
gonna
with
take
names in
over the
this.
world. I'm not gonna let any one of them leave. And he just destroys everything at first. And he's just like not worried about them thinking he's insane because he's just like, I'm doing this for like the greater good, I guess. Which I like.
Yeah. It's kind of hilarious and ironic that like the main characters end up coming around to his side after he gets assimilated. They're
Yeah.
like he's the one who's like all but self-sacrificial and try to like destroy everything to make it so they can't escape, and eventually they turn around on that when he
Well,
gets taken
yeah.
over. So
To be fair, that's clear in both movies, but it is kind of like, oh, we're gonna, try to survive and we're gonna make it through this, and then they realize there is no making it through this. We just gotta like stop this thing no matter what. It can't leave. Um,
yeah.
it's just like
Well,
over time they realize it is a pointless endeavor. They just have to stop it.
and going back to that premise, that's what I love about this movie is like it by miracle this ship just happened to land in the most remote place on the
Hmm.
planet.
Yeah.
It's it's only because of that that they have the edge because it's just 12 people in the most remote place on the planet, and it's like it can kill and take over all of them, and then if it manages to get back it'll succeed. But the only thing that like between it and the world is the people that are here, and
Yeah.
it's a brilliant brilliant premise that works
Mm.
so well for this movie, especially with how they develop the characters.
It's a very similar premise to Alien, right? Of just wanting
Yeah,
to kill everyone and then get to civilization and multiply. It's just a very similar premise. Um,
yeah,
it's kind of interesting because we said the new one just tried to be Alien. But the old one I think is so much more unique than Alien, which is not a to say that that Alien isn't like a great movie, because it is. I think it's also one of the greatest like horror movies, but the thing I just think is like on another level of like just filmmaking in general, because the feeling you get when watching this and everyone being super paranoid and you not knowing who to trust is just so unique and
yeah.
so special.
Well, what that is, I love the description that Alien is Halloween in space. Like
Hmm.
it really is like a slasher movie. Like
Yeah,
the alien acts like a slasher, and the cast and crew, they, even though they are people, like everyone always describes them as like truckers. It's like space truckers, and like with a slasher villain. And
hmm,
in this movie, the thing doesn't act like a slasher. It
no,
really does act like a Lovecraftian being that like takes you over and like, replaces you. And when it attacks, it doesn't attack like the alien. It's not efficient. It's messy and like all explosive and insane. So it it feels different because for the most part, where the horror and the suspense in this movie comes from is not knowing, like, if the people that the characters are talking to are people, or if they've, like, been replaced themselves, and, like, who to trust, and
yeah.
the fact that it tries to get them against each other, which is what makes it so smart. Like, there are all these efforts to, like, sow mistrust in the group, especially with the blood and, like, destroying that and, like,
Yeah,
getting
there's the one that gets the uh fuck, what's his name? Mac something. The Kurt Russell.
McCready.
McCready, yeah. It gets McCready's jacket and rips it apart and just leaves it on the ground. Right after one of the characters said,
Yeah.
no, it was actually it was McCready who was recording the thing. It was just being like, "Oh, I think it rips through your shirt," and it just does that to him.
Uh,
And I was just like,
d
"Oh, that's so cool."
Let me get to that shot. I love that shot. I think it's a little bit later. Yeah, I love this one here where I yeah, it is slightly out of focus where you see him recording and you just see the door open in the background. And in
Oh,
all the
I didn't
shots when
notice that.
he has it, there's a focus on the door, and there's just this feeling that he's being watched.
Uh huh.
Like it really, like it feels like you're just sitting there and you're like, someone is listening in
Yeah.
on him recording this thing. It's like, and that must have been where it got the idea. I think
Yeah.
he might have told Fuchs about it, but it might have just been someone was listening in, and then they decided to try to get the group to turn against McCready by sabotaging the clothes.
Yeah. It is such a smart villain. I love that. Like at every turn, and it's kind of what I love about like just its concept in general, because it's not like a monster, you know. It's ignoring the new one, the prequel. It's like it is actually just it feels so limited in terms of what it can do, which is why it has to be alone with them. It can't just like attack them all at once like an alien, which is what I find more interesting. It's just like it needs to be
Well,
smart about when it takes over and kills the people. So it needs to be alone, and it needs to be, know when to strike. And that's
yeah,
so cool.
that weak element is like that's what I think differentiates it so much from like the other sci-fi slashers, if you will, like Alien, or like even Terminator. The first
Yeah,
Terminator kind of has that element. There's a sense of like this thing is so strong it can't be stopped, and it's like
yeah.
the thing doesn't feel like that
Yeah,
because like it is
it's
weak
different. It's just
in
like it is so smart that it can't be stopped. It's not that it is so strong that it can't be stopped. And that's what makes it like so unique. Because it is
yeah.
like just the powers. Like it can, pretend to be someone, but it can't just like tear apart the whole entire group and just, get on with life. It needs to take over one by one to um firstly to spread, and secondly to survive in this, because if they know who it is, then they're just gonna burn it. and someone needs to be smart about when it takes over and who to take over, and how to so mistrust and everything. It's just such a smart like mind games that the thing does, that I love so much.
It's fantastic. Let's talk about the characters. So there are 12 of them,
Hmm.
and I'm I'm always blown away with how they make all the characters stand out. Like because it's not like they have like elaborate arcs or like all these insane connections. It's not like these characters are like all super like in detail written or like have like insane backstories. What they do have is distinct personalities. They stand
Yeah.
out from each other because of like their attitudes. They react to different situations in different ways, and they pour just enough that you remember them. And moreover, they all have a unique role at the base. Like all you get a sense of like how the place runs. Like Knowles is the
Hmm.
cook, Clark like is the person that has the dogs. You got the Doc and Blair that are the doctors. There's a couple of them have specific roles like meteorologist. Obviously, McCready's the helicopter pilot. Like everyone has something that they do that makes it so that they don't feel like you could just cut them out of the story, and it makes it so that like you care just that little bit more because like there are 12 characters. It's a lot of characters. Like you'd imagine it'd be almost inevitable if they'd feel like cannon fodder and they just get killed off, and that like we're trying to, which we'll get into with the 2011 movie, but it's the characters in this movie stand out because they're interesting and because they have something that makes them specific to this base and specifically memorable because of who they are.
Well, that's what makes it so cool, because as the movie goes on, you don't know which one of them is like the main characters. You know, which one of them are the main characters, the ones that are gonna make it to the end. You just have a feeling of like any one of them could die at any moment. Other than I guess McCready, who I always thought he's gonna be like the last one. Um, Maybe
Yeah,
just because of
he
like
does.
Kurt Russell's star power, I guess. But
Yeah, and he does like stand out like a little bit from the group. Like that's always the thing I love about the original Alien is that I always have thought that Dallas is more the main character of that movie until he just gets killed off, and
mhm,
then Ripley almost like just steps into the main character role because it needs to be filled. And like in this movie, there's a little bit of an earlier sense that Mac's the main character, but
yeah,
yeah, at the beginning, like not really. It's kind of anyone's movie, and
yeah.
then the roles come in
Well,
later.
yeah, he kind of becomes the main character when he makes it back, from is it Knowles who cut the rope, and he had
Yeah,
to
yeah,
make it
yeah.
back from the storm by himself. And because
Yeah,
at that moment he just takes charge, because he has a bomb, and he's like, you're gonna do everything I tell you to do. And then he comes up with the test, to, to put the hot needle on the blood,
yeah.
which is again
So,
really smart. But
yeah,
that's when he
so
just gets in charge, and you're like, he's the main character now. But before then, you could say it's anyone's movie.
yeah, that's like the last 30, 40 minutes of the movie. He just pulls out the stops and it's like, okay, no one is getting out of my sight, and we're gonna like figure out what the hell is going
Yeah.
on. So I don't want to go like too line by line, but I do kind of want to go in order because this is one of those movies that like just breaking it down like in terms of how things play out is almost the best way to go about it. So um from the beginning, I always loved this about John Carpenter. He always opens his movies with John Carpenter's The Thing or John Carpenter's The Fog. It's like a reference to old movies he liked, like Howard Hawks opened his movies that way. Like Howard Hawks is like the title of the movie that he had.
Hmm.
So it's such a bold like thing to do as a filmmaker because this was early on in John Carpenter's career. This was like I think his fourth movie, maybe. It's it was fresh off of like his earlier material,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, it feels like the kind of thing you do later on in your career, when it's like a selling point, like
yeah,
like
Francis like
Quentin Tarantino's
Megalopolis.
something,
Yeah,
not
Francis Ford Coppola's
yeah,
Megalopolis. It's like it's
yeah.
when you want to like sell your name. Like he was basically like someone from like A24 back in this day. He was like an independent filmmaker, all but so yeah. So you have a crazy opening here with a helicopter where someone is desperately trying to snipe a Alaskan husky. Just
Oh, can I just
what?
say, I felt so refreshed. It felt so refreshing that they didn't hit a single shot because it's a sniper on a helicopter. It'd be so hard to hit a fucking dog of all
Well,
things, and it just doesn't hit it at all. And I was like, yeah, obviously it wouldn't.
honestly, I always love that as like a criticism or a pet peeve with movies. People are always like, "How did they like get through when they were shot up?" Like, you ever shoot a gun? Like
It
it
is
is
way
hard to
harder than
shoot.
people think.
Yeah, people, especially with handguns, I think people like overestimate people's like basic
Yeah.
marksmanship. Like it's hard, but yeah,
It's
driving in
because
a helicopter with a rifle.
movies nowadays, especially like superhero movies, everyone has superhuman name, and so it just feels like this type of shot is super easy to get, or like Mission Impossible type of thing, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna hit every shot. But I just felt so, it just felt so refreshing to be like, yeah, he's not gonna hit a single shot, but it's just the desperation of trying to hit the dogs so much that I love, because you just sense like there's something weird going on. And I told you, the dog is such a good actor, because you look at the dog and you
Yeah.
just feel like there's something off with this dog, but I can't put my finger on what. He's just not acting properly, and I love that.
What's that word? Sus. The dog is acting. Ah. Yeah. It's great. So yeah, very intriguing opening scene, very intriguing hook with this dog like getting shot at in a helicopter marching in. So all the characters rush out and this guy throws grenades at them, and then he comes in with the gun, and then Gary ends up shooting him. So lots of questions, not a hell of a lot of answers, and a dog. So get introduced to the characters there. It's just great. Like you don't get a lot, like, because you don't know a hell of a lot of the characters from the outset, but it's just like an interesting hook for the opening where you're wondering what's going on, you're wondering what any of this means, and it's a unique way to open a horror movie. They don't focus on the scares, they focus on like the questions and the mystery, which is kind of what this whole movie's about.
hmm It's also similar to Alien in that way, where you just part of the fun is in not knowing too much about the monster. You're just like, it just seems so like eerie and otherworldly, which it is literally otherworldly to be fair, but you get what I mean. It just seems so alien, and it you're just trying to figure out how it works, and sometimes it'll just come up with something else that the thing can do, and you're just like, holy shit, this is insane, and it is so out there. It isn't just like horror monster. It is more unique than that, which I love.
Hmm. So the dog, you were mentioning the dog like it being a good actor. This shot is crazy where it's like hiding under the ping pong table and you get it like looking directly up. It's like because the helicopter's going off around there, and it's like it is funny how like hilariously nuanced this performance feels
Yeah,
for a dog.
like when it walks into the dog pen, right? And he just has a look of like, I'm about to do something really like evil, like it's up to something,
Well,
and it just
and being like singled out too, like there's this
yeah,
sense that it like doesn't belong. It's weird.
exactly.
Like it just walks out and then just kind of like lays straight down. It's like it's trying to avoid suspicion. Like it's trying to blend in and failing. It's
Yeah, it is
yeah, this
so
dog.
great. That dog, genuinely, man, the best dog acting I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, so you get this really memorable shot here where the dog is like going through the halls and then it stumbles upon what looks to be patient zero. So uh I've watched a lot of different videos and I've rewatched this movie plenty of times to have my own theories on who patient zero was. And I know what this shadow looks like, but I'm curious, who do you think patient zero was?
I think it's hmm, good question. I'm not sure. Because every time I think about it, like could have been this or that. I'm not entirely sure. But who do you think?
The the filmmakers have always said that they've known who was the thing in like
Right.
any given scene, and it tracks that way when you start laying things out. I think it was Palmer.
Right.
This shadow looks like Norris, actually, to me. Like Norris had like usually wears like a sweater, and like there's something about his hair that kind of looks like it. And for all I know, like I don't know what cast that shadow. It's meant to be ambiguous. You're not supposed to know. But Palmer, like, there are these specific actions that, again, we'll probably get into later on that seem attributed to him. There's one scene in particular where he's missing, which is very weird. And it's obviously Norris gets turns out to be a thing as well, but I've always thought that it was Palmer. And
Hmm.
yeah, so interesting stuff. So they arrive. So this will connect right along to the prequel. So they arrive at the Norwegian base, and you get a lot of interesting clues. So
Fantastic set design, by the way. Everything just tells a
oh,
story. You're just like, something really weird happened here, and you just get just like kind of track like them losing their minds over time, just as they're walking through. You just see that the characters lost their mind over time trying to stop the thing, the same way that the characters do in this movie over time. It's just like seeing their own fate, basically. It's kind of what I love about that.
well, yeah, through and through, the set design in this movie is amazing. It's insane. I've heard that they like lowered temperatures on the sets to like really like cold. Like I don't know if it was like freezing or something. It wouldn't need to be because like the bases themselves would like be fairly heated, but there was an effort to make things like really cold, and that's like why they can wear as bulky of jackets as they do.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
there's something special about like older movies like that where the it just feels a little bit more homemade. Like it feels like it is shot in Antarctica, whereas movies nowadays would just be like on green screen or whatever.
yeah, like that sense of homemadeness, like that's especially apparent with Rob Bottin's like makeup work and all the creature effects with the thing. Like there there's something so authentic about that when you know that it's not CGI, and you know that it's like something that they had to make themselves, and they had to like engineer the effects. It's a very good way to look at this movie. It almost feels like homemade. There's something just more authentic about like this movie than a lot of other movies nowadays. Yeah. So this entire set is insane, and you get a lot of intriguing clues. And just to like we'll talk about the 2011 thing, but just to throw praises out there, because I as you might have guessed, I was not the biggest fan of that movie, but I when you look into the behind the scenes and when you look into that movie, there was an effort on the filmmaker's part to like recreate this base and to make like to connect the events. They really
Yeah.
did want to make a prequel. They wanted to make an interesting scenario of like, hey, what was the thing before the the movie that we watched in 1982? Like they explain how like the hole was blown out of the side. They
I
obviously
mean,
show at the
no,
end the guy
honestly,
that
the prequel aspects of the prequel are the best part. The original stuff is the worst part of that movie.
yeah, it's so funny how like specific those things are too. Like the axe, like that genuinely was one of those things where I was like, ah ha ha, like that connects. But I was like, it's it's so small. Like you're like there's details that connect to the original movie. It's like good for you, man. But it's like it does so little in the grand scheme of
Yeah,
things
in
when the
terms of
rest of the
like a
movie's pretty
movie,
meh.
that movie doesn't do much, but in terms of like the little details, like oh, the axe, that was cool. I like the way that they did that. Thumbs up.
Yeah. So they continue to find clues, and obviously something has gone down here because like the entire place is
Oh, I
destroyed.
love, by the way, the effects of the guy who killed himself with the throat cut off and just the blood
Yeah.
frozen. The frozen blood
I,
is so
I
creepy. I love that.
I gotta say I was a little disappointed they didn't actually show that. That was just left off screen. That guy just basically
Yeah.
took his own. I was a little bit like, come on, man, you wouldn't show that in like because that's definitely the most memorable element of this set. That is a very grotesque thing to see. You're like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, man, couldn't imagine. But yeah, very very memorable, and I'm glad that they showed that in the prequel. So they find this huge grotesque blob. I love that line. What is that? Is it a man in there or something? It's like it's
Oh, and the
yeah.
effects of the
So
two faces were it's so good.
yeah, there's stories that the set, like the people that were on set were like throwing up IRL because of like how like grotesque
Yeah,
these different animatronics were. Like
yeah.
I
I'm
don't
sure we're
even
just gonna end up like talking about it every time it comes up, but like the effects of the original thing are
yeah.
insane. Everything
Bro,
about it throughout the entire movie, everything just looks so creepy and grotesque and perfect, and I love it so much. And just the
well,
first
like
time we see the two faces, and it just like you can't even tell what it is. It just looks off, and you just want to throw up.
yeah, there's something about it that just looks so like it really does look like something that just doesn't belong in this world. It's so
Yeah.
foreign to what you expect. It's just blood and like it doesn't look like anything that's us. Like it's ingeniously made. And like according to the stories, like they put Rob Bottin in the hospital. Like they hospitalized him because he was like staying up for like so long. Like he was insanely sleep deprived and it was cold on set. Like I think he got like some kind of infection. Like that's why they hospitalized him. Like he had like a chest infection or something. But it's yeah, if those stories are true, that guy like literally hospitalized himself for these effects, and they're worth it because it is absolutely insane. Yeah. So from there, let me track along. So they start dissecting this thing, and Windows can't uh, get any signal out. Classic, understandable in this situation, 1982, and just communication was more difficult back then. They probably checked in like intervals, but classic storm can't get out. And again, most remote place on the planet. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that. They
Mhm.
can't call for backup. It's like there you go.
I mean,
So
that's even a thing in the in The Shining, where they just
yeah,
can't.
yeah,
They try calling for it, and sometimes there's no signal, and when there is, it's just like it's very hard to like, because there are phones. You just like sometimes you call and the person just isn't there, so it's just very analog. So it
I,
doesn't help.
it is. I always do laugh at that phenomenon. Like it's hilarious to think about all the stories that have been like murdered by the invention of the cell phone.
I
Like
think that too. So many times I'm just like, man, if this movie, like, you just want to make a horror movie nowadays, you kind of just gotta set it in the past. Like,
yeah,
so
like
much of it is just ruined by the cell phone.
it's ironic about Long Legs being set during the 90s. It's like
Yeah.
obviously the marketing was like that was the Silence of the Lambs, but that's a whole thing in the third act of the Silence of the Lambs. Like Clarice is like, "Hey, can I use your phone?" Because it's like, yeah, that was the world of that day. Like you didn't have like a radio in the car to like call for backup or a cell phone on you. Like you just had to look for a phone basically. So yeah, it's it's a funny thing. It's like maybe it's just a better idea to just have your film take place in the 90s if you don't want to
Yeah.
deal with those kinds of things because it can help. So you get some brooding here. Again, Palmer walking around and smoking a J. Again, so something here that I think is actually interesting to think about with who might be the thing and who might not be is like again the decisions that are made. And this we'll get into this when we talk more about Childs, but I love that the human characters that like actually turn out to be human, they have human flaws and they make human mistakes, and more so like they have human ignorance. The thing doesn't. Like I because Child's getting like all self-righteous towards the third act and like making fun of McCready when he's like sorting everyone out with the blood test. It's like the thing doesn't act that way. And like there comes a point when like where like it's like where Palmer absolutely is a thing during the blood testing scene. And the way he acts, like he tells Childs not to argue with McCready. It's like the thing is out for self-preservation, and like the characters that are human, they make choices that might not make sense, but they make sense for a human to make rather than for a thing to make.
Oh yeah, it's eh, as you said, it's the kind of thing like when you're first watching it, you might just like not be able to get it, but when you're rewatching it, you're just like, oh, it makes sense. Like, why is he acting so strange? Or maybe not strange, because it's not like they're acting out of character when they're the thing. It is just they're acting, out of self-preservation. So you're just like, oh, as you said, like just saying, "Oh, don't argue with them" and everything. And it's just like, "Oh yeah," he's just trying to calm down the situation. I guess try to find some way out of it instead of just like arguing like Childs does, which is interesting at the end with the two characters where you're like,
Yeah.
is it human? Is it not? It's interesting.
We will get there. So from there, you have the assimilation with the dogs. Pretty insane scene. I love how the dogs like all start growling and they all start reacting, and then after that, they start running once like it becomes more like nightmare induced fueling and
Yeah,
like obviously it grabs one. So yep, it's and I like this too because this doesn't like I said, this didn't it seemed like it was trying to play it cool and it realizes it's probably like fucked it up, but once they start growling at it, then it like just is like, okay, the stops are over. And it like the implication is at this point it's already infected somebody else. So it just tries taking over the dogs and you get all the characters reacting and seeing this and this shot of the dog thing, like it like oh
it is.
the way it
It is
the way
so.
it moves, like it all the I don't know what like created that whole tentacle effect, but there's a whole like, there's these little appendages that like all like wriggle around
Mm-hmm.
like hairs, like yeah, and it's like I don't know what created that effect and how they did that with like the wrapping, but it's really creepy how that thing looks and like what it does to you when it takes you over.
Yeah, I think I kind of like how like the thing it doesn't really have like a form because like a lot of times when you think about like an alien it's just like a humanoid type of creature, but this is just like it's just a being, it's just like a parasite, it's barely even like you know it's only a person when it imitates a person, but it doesn't feel like the type of thing that would just like have live like a human life in their own
Yeah.
planet.
Well,
It feels like a parasite.
yeah, like what did that thing look like before like the movie happened? Like
Hmm.
did it even have a specific form that like it stuck to or that it looked like or that made it what it is? Because it seems but like defined by like taking over other things, like you said, like a parasite.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that too. People, by the way, people said that the 2011 thing fucked that up. I don't think it did. Like
Um,
they hit it in the ice and like you don't see the shot of it. And I at the end I've heard people say that's supposed to be its real form, but I don't think they ruined that in the
it
2011.
kind of feels like it's supposed to be its real form at the when they get the in the ship when Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in the ship. But the thing it still has like the face, I guess, from the guy who took over. So I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't find that too bothersome, and I honestly liked that the big ice block, like you couldn't see what was actually inside of
Hmm.
it. Like I appreciated that. So
Yeah.
good thing in this movie, and to that movie's credit, I don't think that like that's what they were trying to do. But yeah, so it takes over the dogs, and they figure out that fire is useful against it.
Hmm. Which
Again,
is
ironic
also
connection to the. Sorry, I interrupted. What?
no, it's actually something that I like is that like and it's kind of like a funny uh old sci-fi horror like trope that you shoot at it with bullets and it just does nothing but fireworks. which doesn't really make sense, but it's like cliche and I kind of like it. But I appreciate in the prequel when they cut it in half with an axe, that it just was like both parts were alive, because the entire point of the
Yeah.
thing is that like it can still be alive if there's a single like cell that's still alive in it. As long as you don't kill it fully, it can still replicate and keep going, which was the thing in the original movie. And so I just appreciated that it just becomes another thing. And it's the same thing in the original, and there's a moment where they cut off the head, and the head just starts walking on its own, and then they just look at it, and it's just like, what the fuck?
But by the way, like we haven't even touched on that, but like this movie is by no means a joyless experience. This is a very funny, entertaining movie. Like
Yeah.
it's just nice to watch, and a large part of that comes down to like the characters themselves. Like I love Bennings. I didn't talk about it with the Patient Zero, but listening and even that's funny. Like Knowles is listening to Superstition and like by Stevie Wonder, which the song connects to the movie itself and
Yeah.
like being superstitious about other people. And Bennings said, "Could you turn that down? I was shot today." It's like,
Yeah, and then he
yeah.
says, "Oh yeah, sure thing," and then he goes to turn it off, and he just goes back and starts dancing. Like, yeah,
He like grazes the top of it. It's like he turns it down, but he doesn't actually
yeah,
do anything.
it's great.
Yeah. I love it. It's this is a very funny movie, even though it like gets pretty insane. Like there are people that say this movie is like nihilistic or that the ending is nihilistic, and I couldn't disagree more. Like I think this is a very hopeful movie, like,
Hmm.
and that it's about like how important it is being human, how important it is to like, cling to like who you are and what you are.
Hmm. I agree with that.
What I was saying is that this is where Blair basically steps up to the plate to figure out what's going on, because when they dissected the thing from the Norwegian base, they didn't exactly know what they were looking at, but now they have a good idea about what the deal with this thing is, and the internal organs of it look normal,
Hmm.
and it seems like normal dogs, but it's fake and it's copying them.
Yeah,
So he thinks that it's ready to take over, and like then probably that it's alien. So you just get these seeds of paranoia that like lead you into him going insane. And seriously, Wilfred Brimley, he's amazing in this movie.
oh
Like
yeah.
I think he was one of like the more like well-known actors in this movie, because not a lot of these actors like are, you know, it's not like watching Predator, where like some of the cast members, like, even like Shane Black is like, oh man, he's in this movie.
Hmm.
Some of these guys are a little less well known, which is a shame actually. Like I wish these guys were more well known. They're good. Um, so yeah,
I
and
did
then
find it hilarious that there's just a simulation there on the computer, like it'll take over the world. They're just like, what?
uh,
How does this even work? What kind of technology is this that's making the simulation?
yeah, we'll get there in a second. I do love that. I always love the 80s movies where you get like those supposed technological wonders, because it was at a time where computers were kind of newer, so it's like when you see it, like they must have been wowed back in like the 1980s, but when you look at it, you're like, what is the deal with that? Like, how does
Yeah.
that even work? So yeah. So after Blair dissects the dog thing, they take blood from the dogs in the kennel. And by the way, I touched on just like the characters like on a macro level earlier, but one character I love is Clark. Like he he straight up is like characterized by like being shy, and there's this just unsaid thing that he seems to like prefer the company of the dogs more than the people at the base. Like
Oh
he
yeah,
just
he's
like
very
doesn't
attached to
really.
the dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, and when McCready shoots the dog that's getting assimilated, he like attacks him. He like grabs
Yeah.
the gun and is pissed. It's like it's a very human moment. And then when Blair kills the dogs later, you get that shot of like just the axe in the dog's head, and like he's just like staring at it, and like he cared about those dogs, and Blair killed them. It's like they pour character into him. I love
Yeah,
like
I thought he was quite interesting. It was a shame that he just ended up dying um by
yeah.
attacking
Well,
McCready.
we'll get into that for sure. I and I love that it's revealed that he was human
He
because
was
the
human,
test didn't
and
work on
Childs
him,
is
and
just like, so you're a murderer.
yeah, it's like yeah. So yeah, from there they look at the tapes that they got from the Norwegian base, and again connecting to the 2011, they don't show this, which I thought was weird. I would have thought they would have like shown the process of actually finding it, unless I'm wrong, because it was so weird that whole
Because
snowmobile
because the process of
crash, like
fighting it was the snowmobile crashing, which was wild because it was like a huge
that
crash that they just fell in there and somehow I guess they
that was
survived. I don't
that
get
was
it.
so fucking over the top. I don't know what they were trying to do with that opening scene, but
That movie
uh,
was trying to be an action movie instead of a horror thriller, and that was the issue.
yeah, it's instead of a character movie,
Yeah.
hey, let's do the thing, but like we don't focus on the characters, and there's 25 of them rather than 15.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like the team before has used thermite charges to find this ship, and I'm guessing these were matte paintings. Man, the all the shots with the ship look great.
Yeah.
I love those old-fashioned shots where that's what they did. It was before the days of CGI, and it was better to just have a matte painting, and it like oh, I wish that more modern movies would just do that, man, just because you can. Like, who says that these types of like tricks from like 80s movies are like outdated? Just do what you want. Do what's awesome. So, you get the characters questioning about this because obviously there's like the assumption right now is that it's alien. I think that's even the line from McCready because it's from outer space. Like, I don't know. So, most people aren't believing, and then you get that simulation from Blair that you were mentioning where he's just seeing all these dots connect to each other, and yeah, what is that? Yeah, entire world population infected 27,000 hours from first contact, and
Yeah. Whatever
yeah,
computer program that is. So yeah. Quite
yeah,
curious.
I'm not. I, I don't know. Maybe he just like put in a guesstimate about how long it would take to assimilate one person, and then like projected that to like spread out like in terms of like exponential growth or something like that.
Oh
Like
yeah, I'm sure like a
I
computer can do the math or stuff like that. It's just there's like a
yeah.
video of it showing how a
Well, yeah,
simulation works and everything. Like it look it's so funny. I-
like it like the red takes over and then it
yeah.
looks blue. It's that whole animation that it exists. Like
Yeah, it is
so,
just like like it's all like he was like on a calculator trying to do exponential growth or something like that. No, it was like a computer program designing a video to tell how how this entire thing could take over the world. It felt very futuristic, and it was just like this is 82. It's hilarious. Obviously, it doesn't matter like at all for the movie. As like a criticism, I just find it really funny.
yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so so Blair sees this and snaps a little bit, goes for a gun, and you get Mac brooding over the clothes. I'm guessing he found those and is like just wondering and doesn't really know what to think of it. And then this leads into Bennings getting assimilated, which man, oh, this shot here where he puts the blanket over the body and then you can see it breathing. I think that yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he puts the blanket over, walks away, and then you can literally see it take a breath, and it's like,
Yeah, you see a
oh,
movie and then he just looks at it like, did it move? I guess not, and keeps going like, oh.
oh man, it's really
It's so
good,
cool because
and
it's all in one shot. It's really great. It's the camera just stays still and you're following the characters in the background, but you just see 'em moving in the foreground. Like, ooh.
yeah. So Fuchs is talking to McCready about Blair and like his notes and about what this thing is, and then Windows comes back in and sees the a bloody chair and bloody clothes, and then you get the shot of Bennings. It's so eerie, like stuff's coming out of his mouth and he's all like red. It's pretty grotesque to see.
Hmm.
And a crazy detail here. There's oh man, I need to look up the name. There's a really good channel on YouTube that has different theory videos about the thing, and one of his most popular theories is about who could have gotten to the blood. Um Windows asks for the keys from Gary, and in this scene, when he sees Bennings getting assimilated, you hear a clang on the ground that sounds like he dropped the keys. And
Mm.
it's a crazy detail because like there's the whole question of like who could have gotten to it because like the it was locked up. Like whoever got to it must have like used the keys and then locked the blood back up. So that is a time where where the keys are is like a question mark, and like who has them at like a time and who could have used those keys. So it's very interesting that they like I just love that because that's not an accident. Like they put that in there for a reason. They like added the sound of like something being dropped in that scene on purpose, and it just shows like care on the behalf of the filmmakers, which I it's what the entirety of this movie feels like.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'll keep an eye out for that when I rewatch.
And I love this shot where everyone is just like standing around it and like it isn't Bennings, and then it reveals its hands. Just that sound it makes, like it again with like it just being so like not of this world. It's like like it. I'm not even sure what that sound is. Like it sounds like distortion, like I don't even know how to describe it. Like, how would you describe, like, how the thing sounds in this movie? Like, that specific, like, screech.
I don't. It sounds like some reverberating type of thing, just like I
Yeah,
don't
like
know. Yeah,
like, it's hard to explain, it's hard to describe, but, yeah,
very
I
unique.
love the sound effects there. So, yeah, they decide to go for, and again, this moment here where, right after they burn him and you just have Gary, like, saying that Bennings was his friend. He's like he's just straight up, it's like, "Dude, I've known him for years, like, he's my friend," and the people in this movie matter to like, the characters, like,
Yeah,
it's not just, like, people just die and it's just like, whatever, like, these guys worked together, they probably have known each other for months, if not years, and it's I I love that they put that in there, like, that everyone cares about each other, like, no one feels like cannon fodder in this movie, even though there's a dozen characters.
yeah. And there's some that die very early on. They still feel like they matter to the rest of the story.
Yep. So, yeah, from there, right after they burn Bennings, Mac discovers that the helicopter has been sabotaged, and you see Blair running through with an axe. Um, so Blair has lost his mind and is destroying the radio room and destroyed the snowcats in the helicopter to try to make it so that they can't put word out or get out. And this is the scene that I was mentioning. So pretty much everyone is here, but Palmer is not here. Like, because yeah, you get Childs. They show Clark reacting to the dogs. So Childs is there, Windows is there, Gary is there, Blair obviously. Norris has as the brings the table in. Everyone's there except Palmer, and it's really weird.
Hmm.
Like he's literally shooting a gun, and you're like, why the hell is he not there to help out, or why did he not like come to go? The implication is because he's a thing, and this is a very good opportunity for him to get to the blood because it's like it's basically right after this that they start questioning the blood, and they bring that up as a possibility. So that's a time that he could have been doing that, or he could have been doing something else, which I I love. And again, I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that detail was like, they would have had the whole cast and crew on there. So they must have decided who was going to be in this scene, like who was actually going to be filmed. And they decided not to film Palmer, which is interesting.
It is.
Yeah. So they subdue the guy. And again with the humor, this is kind of dark for him to be like, firing a gun and using an axe, but there is also a funniness to this. Like a guy like basically in his long johns just losing his mind and like breaking up the radio. So yeah, they manage to subdue Blair and bring him in, and they lock him into the side shed. Yeah, and he tells him to watch Clark because obviously he thinks he's patient zero, which we know later on he isn't, ironically enough. But yeah. And I just a small thing, I love that line. It's like, trust is a hard thing to come by, Blair.
Trust is
Why don't you
hard thing
just
to
try
come by these
trusting?
days.
Why don't you just try trusting in
Trusting
the Lord?
God,
Yeah,
yeah.
or trusting in God. Yeah. So they start asking that, like they're kind of laying out what's going down, and then they basically just ask the question, like, if I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, like how would you know if it was me? And they come up with the idea of coming up with a test, and the doc has an idea to combine blood with blood they already have. I'm not sure what the deal with this is, by the way. Like, it's interesting that they just have like their own blood on standby. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what type
mm,
of um of base this is, what their work was exactly. Because I guess it
Yeah,
depends for what they're doing if they might need that blood for something. I'm not sure.
yeah, they don't exactly go into like a hell of a lot of detail about like what they may have been like looking into. Like I said, there's meteorologists here. There's geologists and stuff. Like everyone has a different role, but like
Hmm.
what they specifically might have been looking into isn't really known. So I'm not sure why they would have had their own blood, but one way or another, they do have these bags of blood taken that must have been taken and like incubated before anything else went down. So they discover that someone has destroyed the blood and that it was unlocked, destroyed, and then relocked up again, which this is why the thing is so fucking smart in this movie, because it did that on purpose, because it knows that like the question is going to be like who specifically got to the keys and like who might be like out to get anyone else. Because if it was just taken over, then you can just be like, well, it was a thing, and it seems more of a betrayal of trust when like someone must have been given the keys
Yeah.
by someone that was a thing, and it's just a great way to try to get everyone to turn against each other, especially when they start laying things out and things don't make any sense. But and that's what I love about rewatching this movie, because like details like the keys potentially being dropped and stuff like that, you start wondering about like mysteries like this, and there is a way to piece it together. There is like a timeline that adds up in terms of like who might have been taken over and when. But yeah, it's amazing. So arguments going on here, and then uh Windows runs off to grab a shotgun, and I mentioned the like human mistakes and human choices. I love choices like this that just seem human. This is not a decision that like would be made by a thing, which is funny because Gary like is at notch 10 here and is like pointing a gun at him. But this is a very human choice by like a very scared person. And I just love that they throw that in there. They throw in someone like just running for like the closest thing they have to make them feel safe, and then Gary de-escalating. I love the characters in this movie. I love that they actually feel like people. Like this is not a scenario where everyone's just like, why did you get to the blood? It's like, it was you, like you had it last. Like it's it's a very realistic argument by very smart people that like
Hmm.
respect each other's intelligence, and I love it for that.
Yeah, unlike the remake, which actually does have a lot of those screamy matches of just like, ah, you did that.
Yes, indeed. It's a shame. It's not as tightly well written with how the characters interact, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, little over an hour in, and you get McCready deciding to like early on pull out the stops and basically like root out who he thinks is suspicious, and he goes with Gary Clark and the doc. Um, he sedates those guys, and then after that, that's when you get that shot we were talking about before with the him realizing that it tears through your clothes.
Mm.
Um, and like I said, I think there's something about the shot and how much they emphasize the door. Seriously, I love it. There's something just ingenious about how this shot was framed that just seems like someone is peeking in on him, and yeah. And then right after that, you get a really good split Doppler here, with Fuchs. They like, he's just sitting in the dark, and it's so,
I always
it
love
looks a
split
little more
diopters.
realistic
I'm
to
always
them.
like, hey, I point to the screen like a child whenever I see split diopter. So it's just like, ah, they did it.
Yeah, really good detail. So, Fuchs asserts that, they should be by the way, he's actually a really smart character. I love this movie, but it would have been interesting if he'd, like, survived just a tad longer. Like, I mean, he just, like, burns himself up to, like, it's crazy. He literally self-immolates to, like, avoid getting taken over. But, yeah, he says everyone should make their own meals, which is very smart, like, and also, like, that connects to, like, the theory that Mac has later where, he thinks that any part of it can take you over, like, any individual piece. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like, any drinking water could be contaminated and food could be contaminated. Oh,
Which
man.
it just adds to the paranoia that they all feel. It's like literally anything could could just
Oh, man.
fuck up.
This is a detail here. So, like, this is right after the power, and right after that conversation, the power goes out. A detail that I love in this movie is the nighttime light. Anytime there's just darkness, there's just a blue light. Like, it's it's almost like Better Call Saul, like
Hmm.
with the 2000 the early 2000s flashbacks. But yeah, I love that, like, darkness in this movie isn't illustrated by like dark, like they have blue. It it's just a great aesthetic choice. It makes the nighttime cinematography like stand out just that little bit more, especially like in this shot here. Like Fuchs has a flare that he's like lit up, and like the
Mm-hmm.
red
Oh
like
yeah, the
combined with the
red
blue,
contrasted with the blue. Yeah.
and obviously the snow. I'm like, dude, Dean Cundy, man, amazing cinematographer, and this movie looks fantastic. So yeah, you get a really good jump scare here with Fuchs with the candle, like that sound, like, who is that? And he finds clothes that belong to McCready that are torn through, which connects to the theory that it rips through.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep. And then I, again with the humor in this movie, the noose. This is so fucking funny. Where they go out and they're looking for Fuchs, and then Blair's just like, I don't want to stay out here anymore. I want to come back inside. And like, neither of them address
Addressed
it,
and
but this just
yeah, there's just a news there. I was like, are we not gonna talk about this?
it just goes on set between both, and they just act like it's not there. It's it's really funny. I love it. It's great. So yeah, they find Fuchs, and again, I don't even know how he pulled this off, but pretty pretty metal to do that, man, to fucking ignite yourself rather than turn. But yeah, Fuchs is dead, and they head up to his shack because he said that he left the lights off. I love that cut. That's a great shot and like a great line drop. Like, we're going up to my shack. What the hell for? Because when I left yesterday, I left the lights off. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then this is where you really start transitioning into third act. So the group does not come back, and they decide to full up board the place up until Knowles comes back and reveals that he cut McCready loose because he found the clothes. And then the so yeah, I love this here too. Again with the weird Palmerisms. Like Childs even is like asks him that. He's like, "Why the hell are you so eager to open the door?" And it's like, and he says, "Because it's so close, might be your only chance to blow it away." And like, in reality, because I know he's human and he's fucking my shit up, so I want to kill him so that I could take over. So yeah, uh, good stuff and good arguments between the characters, and then from there Mac breaks in and yeah, like puts a flare up to dynamite. So and yeah, I Kurt Russell's performance here, by the way, really good. Like I love the tear in his eyes and how like he's just covered in snow. Like it's like he's one step away from like going Blair's route because he's just like he does not trust anybody and is just desperate for like safety.
Yeah, it's something I love. Just like the characters in this movie, they all feel like they're slowly losing their minds, and just like the way they look, especially Kurt Russell, he just looks more and more like worn down as the movie goes on. It's just like, oh, it's kind of what I love about that final shot. That they're just fucking exhausted and just like dead inside. You're just like, there's no point in fighting anymore. That's it. If we have any surprises, we're not in the shape to do anything. Let's just, you know.
Yeah, the ending is amazing. We will get there for sure. Um, yeah, the fear is a huge factor with paranoia working in this movie.
Mhm.
So we finally arrive at the defibrillation scene. This is an a feat of like classic filmmaking and practical effects
It
and
looks so fucking good. I was watching it. I was like, no way did they do that. And I just rewound to be like, no way. Let me see this again. How did they do that? It just looks
well
so good.
okay, so seriously, like I've looked into this a decent bit. Like when you start looking into the details of this scene, it is insane. So the most blink and you miss it detail that they went out of their way for, I'm not making this up. That they got a double amputee to film the very brief shot where the doc is reacting and he doesn't have any arms. That is not the actor that plays the doc. I'm not kidding you. They got someone that had no arms to do that shot. It's like it's just one of those insane things where like it's just this little moment and they they decided to do that rather than to just have him like put his arms in his shirt. It's like, yeah. So that's the shot you have there when the arms get cut off. And there's also this shot here when you get like the chest rumbling. Apparently John Carpenter said that the effect like like the monster like coming out of the chest looked, he compared it to the fountains from Las Vegas, the whole like shooting up and like, making a pattern. Like it just didn't look right. Like they had to do it a couple more times for it to look more like random. Like
Hmm.
we were like what we've been talking about with like how like flailing and like parasitic the thing looks.
Yeah.
And yeah, so insane shot here with I think that was like a puppet actually. Like or like it was the like its head coming out and then like the stuff on the side, like I'm not sure what that was, but I think it might have been puppeteered from like below, and then like when it gets melted, microwaved bubblegum and like what like I forgot what the other part of it was. Like it's like it was like I don't remember what material it was. It might have been rubber or latex, but like what they did to make the look of this thing, like the head melting off, like it's pretty insane. Like what they chose to go with, and again, this is just back before you could CGI all this stuff. They had to figure it out. They had all these crazy ideas, and they had to come up with practical solutions to make some of these insane shots.
And they did, which is insane. Like, it's not that they just came up with it and it looks decent. It looks insanely good. It looks so good.
Well, it's just one of those things where like it really doesn't ever get dated. People always say that about certain movies that they just don't age. And it's like the reason why this movie is one of those is there's this sense of authenticity to these effects and
Yeah.
obviously the characters in the story. It's yeah, this movie will never like look old just because like they did these effects for real and they tried to make a great movie.
Yeah, and obviously
So
because it was shot on film, it has the fantastic thing of being rescanned, and we have 1080p versions of it nowadays, which is just beautiful.
yes, indeed. So yeah, the head crawls away and almost gets away until it's
He's just
discovered and
crawling
they
away,
burn
nobody
it.
saw it, and
Yeah,
then one of them looks back and is like, what the fuck?
yeah, it's like it is hilarious. Like 'cause it's just a funny little subversion too, where like you're wondering if something might come of it, and it's like no, not really. It's like that thing's just head just turned
Yeah,
into a little
cause I was
spider, and
thinking,
they
oh
just
fuck, it's gonna walk away, it's gonna get away. Oh shit, and then it's just like, oh fuck.
yeah, they just see it and they're like, well, pest control. There you go.
Yeah,
Oh god. So now we get yeah, so right before McCready ties everybody up, you get the brief standoff here where Childs is like trying to back him into a corner and he's like like just saying he won't do it. He's like, then kill me. He's like, I mean it, I guess you do. And then Clark attacks and it sucks because again, as this is what I'm saying with those decisions that like seem at first like they might be that it was actually a thing, but it's like no, like he's unhinged. Like McCready's unhinged and is acting insane and like pretty understandable for Clark to try to like stop him because like he could get them killed. It's like it's a human choice. It's not
yeah.
like it's not one that's self-preserving. Like
So much
it's
so that he
human to
ends
go
up
out of your
killing
way to try
himself.
to yeah, it's human to go out of your way to try to like stop someone that's acting insane and to do it on your own. So,
But that scene is so good because it's just like McCready was he was just like a suspect of being one of the things because of the clothes, and then he was cut off and he survived the snowstorm getting back to the base, which they said
yeah.
no normal person should. So they're like, oh, it could be him, and so obviously it makes sense for him because especially because he knows he's not one of the things to have the bomb and just be like, look, I'll blow us all up if you do anything to me, because it's the only way for him to survive is for him to like threaten them, because at this point they're all convinced he is a
Yeah, that
thing.
he's the one. All of them are human and, like, he's the only one, and that's why it's so desperate because it's trying to, like,
Yeah,
protect itself, but
yeah, and then it's so like he acts insane, but because he's like there's a justified reason for it. He acts insane because he is like a, a a normal person who's being accused of being a thing, and he's just trying to like fight to survive, and everyone is against him, and he knows he's not the imposter, uh for lack of a better word, I guess. It's just I just it's just like it makes sense for what's his name, Palmer, to attack him.
Clark.
Clark, sorry, I'm really bad with names.
It's okay. This just I'm bad too. I've just rewatched this movie so
Way
many
too many
times.
times, yeah, that's fair.
There's 12 characters. I get it.
Yeah, the Clark attacking him because it sees McCready as being insane and as being like just like unhinged and probably being a thing, But from McCready's perspective, everything he's doing makes sense. It is all just like a bunch of characters doing their best to survive in an impossible situation, and both Clark and McCready are doing the same thing. They just end up crossing paths, I guess, in that, trying to survive thing. Um, yeah, I just love that moment where he kills him because it just makes perfect sense from every character's perspective for that to have happened. It is a shame that he dies, but I quite like that.
Yep. Again, the human decisions in this movie. So, yep. So we finally arrive at the blood testing scene. McCready pulls out the stops, and his theory is that every piece of it is a whole, and that like its blood could react to like a hot needle, and like he thinks that like its blood will like fight to defend itself. So it's like it's a more archaic version because like the blood serum thing was like something where they could he was probably like going down to a chemical level, figuring that they could like look at like the changes in the blood to see if it matched. And like McCready, like this is essentially that in essence, but it's just a more simplistic version of just
Hmm.
putting like heat to blood.
Which I
I've always
prefer
loved
as a way of telling if they're human than the one in the remake
rather
with the
than
stupid fucking teeth
cheese.
fillings, which uh,
Look
teeth
at
fillings
her.
really.
I- well, that's stupid. So yeah, I do love, by the way, especially with Windows Jesus, them using the scalpel like damn near cuts his thumb off. It's like you you could draw blood with the arm. It's like, my God, dude. But yeah. So and this entire scene is silent, and I love all these close-ups here of like the individual petri dishes with the like the labels of the names, and then
Mhm.
you get all the shots like emphasizing that he's like putting the wire to the torch. It's like so he tests windows, and then he tests the corpses on the table. So he tested Doc and Clark, and you'd mentioned it, but yeah, like you have child saying Clark was human, which makes you a murderer, don't
Yeah.
it? Uh,
I gotta
oh,
say, by the
and
way, it's obviously hard because McCready's like the main character, so it's hard not to say he's like my favorite. But I love Child so much.
yeah, oh yeah,
I do
I
have
didn't
a
even
bias towards Keith David, of course.
yeah, I didn't even mention it. Fucking Keith David. I'm pretty sure he was like 25 or something. This was early on in his career, like really early on, and it's just hilarious to see him in this movie, and
Yeah,
he's
I
fantastic.
absolutely adore Keith David and everything I've seen him in, and just see
Me
he's
too.
got the best personality in this movie. He's great.
Yeah, wonderful actor, amazing that he's in this movie. This fucking shot, this is one of my favorite details in a movie. Is is Palmer's reaction when he says that they're about to test him. You can just see it in his face. There's just this like slight little like twitch in his eyes where he's like, "Well, I'm fucked. They're gonna
Yeah.
find out." It's amazing. It's like it's a blink and you didn't miss it detail. You'd never notice it unless you were rewatching it. But when you rewatch it, I love that detail. And then the defibrillation was one thing, but man, this jump scare here of the blood literally screaming and like
Yeah.
jumping away.
I I
That's
don't
good
know how they
stuff.
did that. The blood jumping it. That was so cool. Cause
Well,
it's the kind of thing it's very easy to do nowadays with CGI, but at the time, I don't know.
I actually don't know myself, but based on what I'm looking at here, I think that's a fake hand. I think the hand is actually like anchored to the ground. They had like a blood rig in it, and like the way he's approaching it just looks like it's his hand.
Hmm.
And then he just puts it in there. Like I think you can tell based on like how the hand that holds the petri dish like is moving. It doesn't look like it's moving in sync with him.
Interesting.
Maybe not though. One way or another, like yeah, just no CGI for that. They did that for real. Um, and even just as something as small as the blood moving away as well. I don't, maybe they just like, maybe it was something as simple as like slanting what looked like that room. Um, but yeah, they did the details for real. So yeah, you get Palmer going insane and then jumping out and ends up killing Windows. This is a brutal way to go, man. It like grabs his head and starts like flailing around
And
with
this is
him.
the
It's
only
like,
time in
oh
the movie where uh the thing kind of like shows like some superhuman strength or anything like that. It just grabs a person. Because
yeah,
in the remake it's like all the time it is basically the xenomorph. But in this it's just like that's the one time where it just like it just does something
well,
superhuman. And it's just
well, and
you kind of get why, because it's been trying to like to be like cautious and do everything smartly, but at that moment he's fucked. He's been caught, and so he's just like doing everything he can to survive, which I like that.
well, well, and moreover, like it's sloppy. Like it just like grabs his head and like flails him around. It doesn't even kill him. Like it starts to take him over before McCready burns him, but like it's just like random. Like it doesn't have like a good way of fighting or an efficient way of
Yeah, it's
killing.
just
Like it's just
self-preservation. It's just like flailing about, like trying to survive.
yeah. So brutal death for Windows, and then McCready lights it up, and I I love the shot of it like breaking through. They must have like lit a guy on fire for that and like had a thick suit. It looked like it'd be fairly easy to do that because of like it looks like it's got like a huge jacket on or something like that, but one way or another, this must have been an actual guy. So yeah. I have seen this movie in theaters twice, and man, there used to be a really good theater near where I live called the Ken Cinema. They played midnight movies and a bunch of like older films. COVID shut them down, unfortunately, or it was already shutting them down. But when I watched it in theaters, that shot where like McCready throws the dynamite and just blasts it away, the entire place applauded. That was it's like it's such a crowd pleaser, man. Like after all that, like it's like fucking just die, man. It's like yeah, great stuff. And yeah, so oh and then he comes in, burns the Windows thing, and then I love this editing here. It is so fucking funny. Like they just cut to like after everything has died down. And you get McCready, he's got the torch, and he like he clearly goes in order of who he thinks is a thing. He goes Knowles, then Childs, then Gary, and it's like, and when he tests Knowles, like Knowles has the flamethrower, like he's he's holding it like the next shot, and then he goes with the wire, and then he does the same thing with Childs. Like he was taking it seriously before, but at that point, he's like, "Okay, I am ready with the torch if they turn to, like, immediately fucking light them up."
Yeah, I love that moment too. It is it is kind of funny just seeing him be like uh just like one by one, just be like, okay, you're good, and just be the part of the group. Like, okay, now we're untie you. And it's funny because every one of them, because like they just experienced something super traumatic. They're just like, fucking untie me, especially the last one. He's just like, are you gonna leave me fucking tied all winter?
Yeah, all of them are, like, taking it serious. Like, I love that line from Childs where, like, McCready's about to test him, and he's just like, "Let's do it." He's like it's he was making fun of him before and, like, getting under his skin, but yeah, they're like all of them are in the same boat now, and, like, they take it seriously, so and it's I love this after that, like, they use a fade. There's a couple of fades in this movie, but there's this sense of comfort here, hilariously enough. I mean, like, a bunch of people just died just there, but, like, you got this assurance right now where you're like, "Everyone here is human. We've
Mhm.
rooted out, we figured out how we can tell who's real and who isn't." So it's like, at least we got that. At least at least we're here. And so yeah, things fully going down now because they left. I will say, I I suppose I get it because maybe they were worried about Blair coming back, but I do find it a little strange that they leave Childs there. Like you would think after that you'd want to stay together, like just and not like separate from the group. But
Every time
it's
I think that, I was like, probably should go like in pairs or something like that. But there's like the movie always gives a good reason. Like there's always justifying it well.
yeah.
So it's not like the kind of thing that sticks in my mind. So I don't even remember that specific instance. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just before they're about to test Blair because that's exactly it. Like they they probably figure by this point that he might have been taken over, but they one way or another they got to test him and they leave Childs behind. And that's what he says. Like if we're gonna give him the test, if he comes back and we're not with him, burn him.
burn him. Yeah.
Which honestly, it's like it's fair enough. It's like basically it's just like if he comes back and we're not with him, that means he's a thing and fucking kill him. And it's like he probably left him to keep a watch out if he came back and pulled a reversal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because yeah, as it turns out, Blair has been busy and making a ship with the parts from the helicopter. And oh man, we already praised the sets, but like even just a prop like this, man, they had to build this whole like little ice cave here with a little bench to like, and it's just this really like homemade looking flying saucer. But they had to make this, and it's a really neat little prop that they got for just this one little scene.
Yeah, I really like how it looks. It looks cool. It is kind of funny to think that it just stole like helicopter pieces to build the ship. Like, I guess it could kind of just do that, and it adds to to be fair to the otherworldly aspect of like this being is so like odd and alien and smart that it can just do that. But it is kind of funny to think, oh yeah, just helicopter pieces, and I make a spaceship.
Yeah, pretty insane stuff. So the thing sabotages the generator because a snowstorm is coming in. So it's like McCready deduces that its plan is basically to just freeze up again and wait till it's rescued. So they destroy its ship in the shack, and then they just start dynamiting the place up because they're like, they figure it's like, all right, well, this thing's gonna take us down with it. It's like, well, let's just freeze and destroy everything so that there's nothing for it to retreat into. So, and this line stings, man. I love this when Gary when they're going through the like maintenance tunnels, and then Gary finds the generator and he just says like the generator's gone, and he's like, "Is there any way we can fix it?" He's like, "It's gone, McCready." It's like, just like, damn, man, yeah, that's it. So
We're in the end game now.
yep. So everyone separates off to get some dynamite. And again, a little lazy. I mean, we'll talk about it with the 2011 thing with all the fucking like, what was that noise? I better go investigate the noise and walk off so that I get killed. But it is a little bit unfortunate that Gary and Knowles just kind of walk off and get taken over. But yep. So the Blair thing attacks. I need to read into this more, but I actually think that this scene was supposed to be longer. I think that they also got Stan Winston to work on just this one shot here. I think because again they hospitalized Rob Bottin, so I think that this was towards the end and that they'd gotten him in here for this. And I think it was like cut because of like budgeting reasons or like or how the effect looked, but one way or another, like from what I understand, the actual fight between the Blair thing and McCready was supposed to be a little bit more of like a proper third act showdown, because it is basically like, it just knocks over the dynamite and then he throws a stick at it, and that's kind of it. It doesn't really feel as much of like a fight as like Predator or even the OG Alien like felt a little bit more like, third act-esque than what they did here. But yeah, still cool as hell, and yeah, fuck you too, and like throws dynamite stick. Really simple, just one liner, like probably the lowest brow of the ones from the 80s, but yep. So we finally arrive at the ending. So what do you think about this ending? What do you think about the interpretations of it and like kind of what it means?
It is interesting to think about. Because I was talking to a friend yesterday. It was actually big coincidence. He had just watched The Thing the day prior, and we were watching a movie. And he was just like, I think at the end they're both human, and it is it, the point is more just so like they're both paranoid messes at this point. Uh, and so they don't trust each other. Instead of just being like one of them is a thing, or especially and even though apparently John Carpenter said that one of them is a thing supposedly. um
Yeah, death of the author and all, and you can say what you will about John Carpenter. Like, there's a lot of things I disagree with him about with
yeah.
filmmaking, but even though I love him as a filmmaker,
Oh yeah.
but
I
it's
find it hard to pick one like interpretation, because I find just interesting the idea that we don't know, and I kind of like not knowing. So I kind of like the idea that I don't know either, so I'm not gonna like interpret it a certain way. You know what I mean? I'm just
yeah.
like I'm
Well,
just along with it.
well, that's what makes this such perfect ambiguity. Like I've said this about the ending of The Last of Us. That's another one that's similar in terms of like the sequel kind of answering like the ambiguity of it
Hmm.
all, and like just by virtue of the fact that it exists. Like any sequel, like I said, would do the same thing for this movie. Like if they made a sequel to The Thing, they would basically have to answer like the questions at the end of this movie, and it's just best if they're left unanswered, because the point of this movie is that you don't know. And it works pretty much no matter which way you interpret it, because it's terrifying if one or even both of them are actually a thing. Like maybe that's the point. Maybe like ironically enough, it doesn't even recognize that like it's won the movie and that both of them are itself, because itself like isn't defined by anything. If it's one of them, then you're like, well, one of them's tricking the other and the other's human, but that basically means that like humanity's kaput, because if one of them is a thing and is still alive, the rescue team's going to find them.
Yeah.
So the minor details here. So a lot of people assert that the bottle of booze is a Molotov cocktail. It's like there were Molotov cocktails that were used in the finale to fight against the Blair thing. It's like, why would McCready just have a bottle of scotch on him rather than one of the Molotov cocktails? And like people think that that was on purpose. He
Hmm.
gave him a Molotov cocktail to drink, and then his reaction and like not reacting to that proves that like he is a thing. I just honestly don't think it's all that implausible for him to just have grabbed a bottle in the third act, just
Yeah.
just if he wanted a drink. I don't think it's too
I think
unbelievable,
that's
but it
very in
is,
character for him. Yeah.
yeah, it is a little bit weird though. The other one, which it's not 100% consistent, but it's hard to overlook, is the vapor from McCready. Super pronounced. Every breath, every word that he utters, you get a huge burst of vapor. Not the same for Childs. It's kind of weird that only one of them is giving off the breath, and that could be on purpose. That could imply that Childs actually is a thing, and that he doesn't have breath because of that. So, and then the last big thing is that his story is thin as hell. He just says he thought he saw Blair and got lost in the storm, and you're just
Hmm.
like, I, Blair had to come back to turn off the power. They saw that, right? It's like it kind of adds up, but it's really hard to believe. They were dynamiting the place up. Like, how could he have gotten just lost? But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to read into this ending based on clues that are given by the film, and my interpretation is 100% like with your friend, that I think that they're both human. I I think the point of this ending is that, like, through all of that, because like, these guys were kind of at each other's throats even before, like, all the, like, killing and, like, insane alien stuff went down, and it's just a moment where, like, the 2 of them are at peace, and they're just willing to, like, accept what's coming, and they're kinda ready to just ride it out into the night, which, like, because some people could, like, say, again, there are people that say this movie's nihilistic and that it ends, like, it's like, well, everyone just kinda dies, right? It's like, "Nah, not really." Like, I think the point is, like, fighting on and, like, pushing for, like, what you are, and, like, refusing to give in, basically, even when, like, you're probably not gonna make it through the night. It's I
There are a
yeah.
lot of stories like that where it's just like we're doing this for like the greater good, for the good of humanity, and we're not gonna make it, but we're gonna die trying. And it is just a nice idea to think about. Which is why, as you said, and especially for it to be a hopeful movie, you kind of have to have that. So they're both human, right? Because otherwise, if one of them is not, then the entire human race is doomed. So I kind of prefer just the idea that that they're both human. Just in general, just in terms of a like more hopeful story. In terms of interpreting it, I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool ending.
Yeah, it works really well for a horror context because, like, it either way, like, it gives you something to think about, and the ambiguity of it is what makes it terrifying, and it's that classic just, like, intrinsic horror to aliens where it's like, if we're alone, that's terrifying. If we're not alone, that's also terrifying. It's like
Hmm.
the this alien creates a lot of horror in this movie based on, like, the idea of what it is and the idea of what it could do to humanity, and it's this ending's important for that. But I always I sometimes I'll rewatch this movie and I'll have a different take on the ending given, like, my attitude at the time, but it's like
Hmm.
I usually like interpreting this as, like, the hopeful ending that, like, both of them made it through human.
Yeah, it is. It is a very good ending. I just like that line, but that line at the end from McCready. I forgot exactly what he says, but it
If we
just
have any surprises for each other, I don't think we're any condition to do
yeah.
anything
But he
about it,
says,
right?
why don't we just stay here for a little while? And the movie just
See
ends.
what
See
happens.
what happens, and it's just like the movie just ends. You're like, man, like it just leaves you with this sense of, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's really sanguine for the situation. It's like, yep, just well, we're gonna. I mean, that's what Child says. It's like Farah's like got the temperatures above the camp, like, won't last long
Won't
though, and he
last long.
says, "Neither
Neither
will
will
we." He's
we.
like,
Yeah, that
"How will we
entire
make it?"
exchange at the end is so good.
Yeah,
Because you could interpret it any way you want, but it's just like two characters who don't know if the other is a human and or a thing or whatever, and they both of them are just like, at this point, there's nothing else to do, and there's nothing else we want to do realistically. We just want to like stay here and
just
die.
want peace. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's well, he's just like, "How will we make it?" It's like, "We'll figure it out." It's like, not much to do now, so let's just wait it out, see what happens.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it's just like,
yeah,
are we gonna make it? Maybe we shouldn't. Uh, so
it's
good.
it's great. This is one of my all-time favorite films, let me tell you, and it's
It is interesting because I had seen this movie before and it didn't blow me away. But this time I watched it, I was just like, man, that's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. Just like it's all right. I just finished it. I was like, wow, that was good. Just
well, it's
everything
so
about it.
ironic too, given where when it came out. I have always said this was John Carpenter's Jaws, or it should have been, this is the film that should have like jettisoned his career, because everyone knows him from Halloween, but he's still like, the latter films of his career, he never really got as popular as like Halloween, and he didn't really do the sequels. Like he kept making really weird movies like In the Mouth of Madness or Christine. Like, yeah, I mean, that's Stephen King, a little bit more accessible, but like he went on to like keep making really weird, like B grade-esque movies rather than movies that were popular and well recognized. And it's only been in like more recent years there's been a turnaround of this movie. Because I don't know if you know, this this movie was released the same weekend as E.T. and Blade Runner in 1982. And when it did, everyone wanted the happy alien movie. And everyone was saying that this movie was like awful and like violent and disgusting. And like, it was like, it had like such an evil and again, like nihilistic take on aliens. And they just wouldn't have it. Like it just didn't vibe with people at the time. And it's always my go-to, like just critics got it wrong. Like
Mhm.
audiences got it wrong. Like they straight up didn't see what was in this movie. And it's only been as of late that it's come back, which might be a blessing in disguise, which we'll get into here in a second. But with the franchise, because other than the prequel, there's been nothing else. There's a video game that I think
Oh yeah, and
got
it's actually a pretty good video game. It is
have you played
fascinating. I've seen a lot of videos about it because there's a YouTuber I like who
it?
likes that game. It is such an interesting because it's like a PS2 game, but like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the you're like your team basically. They can like betray you and they can turn out to be the thing, and it's this like AI thing that is like super like insanely advanced for a PS2 game. It is really cool. It is genuinely like a really cool game.
Huh. I gotta play it. I've heard like pretty good stuff about it. Like it was made like back in like the Silent Hill era of like those types of games were like at the center of like horror, which I think works for the thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've been curious to play it because that's pretty much the only attempts that have been made to franchise this story. So I
Yeah,
yeah,
thankfully not too much.
well then.
Okay, are you ready to talk about the thing 2011?
Yeah, I'm ready to talk about that. So
All right, so
uh
there was a prequel to the movie we just spent an hour and 40 minutes talking about that came out in
there
2011,
it was.
and it is not worthless. It's the best thing I can say about
Yeah,
it.
it's a really good way to open with it because like we mentioned it with the all the details, like the axe and stuff like that, and the showing how the two-faced like thing came to be, the coming through the hole instead of the base that like it breaks through and all that, like, and why it was lit on fire. Like you can tell that the filmmakers wanted to make a prequel to the thing and wanted to make it interesting. And honestly, like, I mean, the thing is niche, and like I said, it's only been like relatively recently that it's like gotten a retrospective look where people like are like genuinely think it's a really good movie. Because like, so they didn't just make this for money. They didn't just this wasn't just something that they made because they knew it would be a success. And honestly, it wasn't all that much of a box office success. So like I
Yeah, I don't know
I
because I've heard
appreciate.
stories about like the studio meddling with that movie, so maybe there is something to that.
Well, there is. That's that I mentioned it before, I think off stream last time, but the CGI, like that was mandated
Uh-huh.
by the studios apparently. There's actual behind the scenes. There's have you heard of the channel Good Bad Flicks?
I've heard about it, yeah. I think I watched a couple of videos from them.
His videos are interesting. What he does is like he'll do reviews of movies that he like asserts are like viewed as bad or like did not get a good reception, but that he thinks like he'll either go into like the story of like the production of the film or like assert that the film itself isn't that bad. And this is one of the films that he covered, and he talked about, if you look in the behind the scenes of this movie, there's actual like animatronics, and they're on display in the actual film. It's just that they covered them up with CGI.
Hmm.
They like use CGI to like get rid of the imperfections when the crew apparently wanted to make all the effects practical like Rob Bottin did in the original movie.
Yeah, and
And
sometimes you can see that. To be fair, while you're watching the
yeah,
movie, you're just like, man, that looks good. But then it's just like in the like you can see the practical stuff in the middle of the CGI monsters, where it's like, oh, this monstrosity in CGI is shit. But I can see the practical effect in the middle there. That's cool. But I mentioned studio meddling because maybe I don't know if there is like a director's cut or something, but this feels like a movie made by a studio because it feels like a movie made by someone who's trying to make Alien when the entire
yeah.
point is that this is the thing. This is an alien. And to be fair, because the thing is, when I was watching, the thing is that's funny. I was watching it. I was just like, this feels like an alien movie, but not one of the good alien movies. It feels like one of the newer ones.
Well,
And then the
yeah.
funniest fucking thing was, I finished the movie, I rated it on a letterbox, and I saw you reviewed it. And I read your review, and you said you compared it to Alien Covenant. It was like we had the exact same experience with this movie. It
Well,
feels like a newer Alien movie.
Well, I'll tell you the reason why that is. It was that like less than 30 minutes into the movie, that thing explodes out of the ice, and then you get like sequences of them being like, "Hey, let's split up into groups of 2 and let's all look around in dark areas of the base until we get offed by it like one at a time."
Yeah.
And it just fucking like rips through everybody. And like we talked about it a bunch before with the original movie, but like the thing in the original movie is weak. It's not like you said, when it kills Windows, that's like the only real time it demonstrates any type of superhuman strength. And even then, it's still superhuman strength within the realm of being human. In this movie, it's like tentacles are like razor blades. Like the guy that plays
Well,
Echo
there's
in
the
Lost, he gets like just impaled, like
yeah.
just on the side, and that's it. It's like,
There's that
ugh.
scene in oh yeah, he does play Echo in Lost. I was wondering where I knew him from. Sorry, I forgot about
I'm
that.
going to hell. I'm going to hell for this, but literally my entire life I have always called him Triple A because I don't even know where to begin with that name. I just always call him Triple A.
Let me hold on. What is his name?
Good luck.
Okay, let's see.
Amazing actor. I've seen him in a couple of other movies. He's good.
Uh,
He's in a
Echo Lost actor. His name is
other
Adewale Akinoye Agbaje. That's probably not how you say it though.
like that's the
Triple A
yeah.
is a good way of calling him, yeah. But
Great actor.
he is a great actor.
And
But yeah, getting back to the point I was gonna make, when I interrupted myself by being reminded that he's in Lost. Um, there's that scene where the thing tricks Mary Elizabeth Winstead into going into the room, which I thought was kind of dumb as well because it's like, yeah, it's obviously the thing, but whatever.
well,
It
well,
just transforms behind her and then she starts running, right? Which is also one of the things where it's like, in the original, I didn't feel like running was ever an option when you're alone with it. It just traps you with its tentacles and you're done, you know? But I guess running is fine. But as she's running away, there's one guy that just stands in front of the monster, and it just fucking stabs through him. And I'm just like,
yeah.
dude, you can just do that? You can just like rip through people? Like, this is an alien.
Well, I always thought like with the dogs, for instance, like it wrapped its tentacles around them. It always felt like consuming rather than
Yeah.
like puncturing. Like it.
Yeah, it created
What?
like
Yeah,
these
it didn't
razor blades
stab
for
people.
the monster in the new one. It just feels so weird. Like,
Yeah,
and that never felt like a thing in the original. Like, you could just stab people with these razor blades. That was so odd.
yeah. It's out of line with what they were doing in the original movie, and it's unfortunate. Um, I was thinking of something on. What were we talking about right before? Related to Echo's actor or
Oh yeah, they was stabbed through. That was what you said.
no? It might have been. It might come back to me later.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So it does definitely feel more like Alien. Just what they. Oh no. I remember what I was gonna say now. The whole cliche of this movie feels very cliched and very, very 2011.
Yeah.
The whole fucking like going off in groups of pairs, or like, hey, I need to show you something, like walk off into this dark corner. Like, so in the original thing, the thing was not picking off people one by one. It was not like going off and like, because it's so obvious and overt. Like it seemed to be like waiting to strike, like waiting to get people alone and vulnerable to like take them over. But in this movie, there's so many times that it just singles people out and just reveals itself. It's like, why are you revealing
Yeah.
yourself? Like the whole point of this is that you're supposed to
Well,
like
if the
hide in plain
first time we
sight.
see the thing in the helicopter, why did it reveal itself and then crash the helicopter? It makes so much more sense for it to land
Yeah.
safely and not kill itself. It's absolutely against self-preservation if it kills itself. It makes no sense.
Yeah. It's like they wanted the helicopter back. I'm like, then just play it cool. Like, what?
It makes so much more sense to play it cool. Yeah, it was so odd.
Yeah, but it just and then AAA and Joel Kinnaman aren't in the rest of the or Joel Edgerton. They're not in like damn near like a good 40 minutes of the movie,
Yeah.
unfortunately. They don't come back until later, which is like it's kind of a lame version of like McCready getting separated from the rest of the group and coming back, like because they were like, how did you survive the crash? But it's just it's weak, and yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the thing about the inorganic material, which I did
Oh,
not
okay.
like. That was
Yeah.
such a weird mechanic to introduce.
Well, seriously, so with this entire movie, it's just like I it's just the worst version of the original movie. And
Yeah.
realistically, when you start thinking about it, like I get why. It's hard to do the original, like do something like the original movie, because like it always was in the original movie. Like, the implication was that something very similar to the events that we see in the 1982 thing happened, like to the Norwegian base. So it's
Yeah.
like, but like it feels more arbitrary when you play it like this, because it when you have to be kind of derivative of the first movie, it just feels like you're either ripping it off or you're just doing a worse version of it.
Well,
And
yeah, yeah, it just
Batista's
feels
a
like
perfect
there is
example.
no reason for this movie to exist. Like it's not telling its own original story with the same like monster. It's not telling really a story at all. It's just like this is what happened to the base before we saw it in a much worse version than it happens in the original movie. Like there is no point for this movie to exist, you know?
Yeah. So the teeth. I understand this. Like because blood is obvious. The blood testing is a really good idea in the original thing. It's like, how do we test if someone is human? I'm like, humans bleed. I'm like, we can use the blood and examine it like based on the blood that we already have, and then after that, they figure out that every part of it's a whole. It's like put a hot wire to it, and then you can like test literally how the blood reacts. It's like it's a really good idea. They they knew they couldn't do that again, even though it's kind of obvious. It's an intuitive like test to see if someone is human, if you like think that someone might be like taken over by an alien. So they didn't want to do that again, and this is the best they came up with. Like it can't come up with organic material, which there is precedent for that, because in the original movie it tears through your clothes. The implication is that like it needs to get new sets of clothes, and that it can't like mimic the clothes that it already has. So it's like there's something there in the original movie to kind of connect to this, but it's just like teeth fillings, really? Like you just shine a flashlight in their mouth. It's like you have teeth, and there's that line like you're gonna like kill me because I floss or
That
something.
was
It's like
hilarious.
not to mention it's just kind of. I mean, I get that it was the '80s, but it's hilarious that like
How
damn
many
near
people
all of them
have? Yeah.
have fillings. Like Jesus, like
I was thinking that it's like everyone has teeth fillings. Like Jesus, I don't know if that
I
was like super common in the 80s because I was born in 2003, so I just cannot know. But like I thought that was wild how many people had teeth fillings.
yeah, it's it's frustrating though, because like realistically, like what else? Like, can you come up with anything more clever? And like I it's hard.
Mm.
So, but it's just it's lame. It's a worse version. So yeah. I don't know.
It was
they
pretty lame.
they needed to come up with something else. I kind of get why they did that.
Yeah, and
Um,
so like there are the best parts of the movie are when it just like shows something and you're like, oh, that connects to the original movie. You know, or it's just like the acts I mentioned. And you know, my favorite scene in the movie was playing during the credits, which was in them going after the dog at the end. I was just like, hey, you know, this is done
yeah,
pretty well.
I I do. I did find it absolutely hilarious, Lars. Like because
He just survived.
that's a huge that's a huge criticism with this movie. Like, why didn't they get like Norwegian actors? Like, why is everybody speaking English? And it's like I I. You know, it's a base, like it's a research base. You know, you get different people from like different areas of the globe, but it was just so funny that the one person that only speaks Norwegian, it's like they're gonna make it to the end. They're gonna be on the
Well, yeah,
fucking
I
movie.
was
It's like
thinking that. I was thinking like, oh, it's gonna be the people that only speak Norwegian that are gonna survive to the end. So I was thinking Mary Elizabeth Winstead is gonna die, and she doesn't. She survives. She makes it through, and she goes to the Russian base at the end. Just survives. Like,
yeah,
I did not like that. Cause I was like, at least I know how it's gonna end. I know it's gonna be, but they didn't even characterize fucking Lars as a character like properly.
no,
Uh,
he barely does anything
he
because
only
again,
exists
he
to
just
connect to
doesn't
the
speak
original
English.
movie.
Yeah, it's just it's really unfortunate. Like I think it almost would have just been better had they just said that had they just acted like everyone was speaking Norwegian, and it's just like they didn't make a thing of it. They're just like we have English speaking actors for like Norwegian roles. You know, what are you going to do about it? But yeah, it's it's weird that she lives and just makes it through, but they still want to try to connect it to the original movie, especially when they like wipe the floor with everyone else. And her as a character as well, it just I don't again with this the worst version of her. She just takes on a very McCready like role, but
Yeah.
she doesn't have the same like personality or wit that McCready has. No one in this movie does. It's like it.
The only character, there was only one moment in the entire movie that I was like, oh, this is kind of doing what the original did with these characters. Is when Edvard stops her. She's walking out of the room and he stops her and says, "Don't talk to me like that in front of my people again." I was like, hey, that's a character
Yeah.
trait.
Well, and I liked him too at the very least because at least they went like with the whole scientific discovery thing, like he pushes forward because he's like there's this implication that he like wants like to like create like a historical like event that was like facilitated by the Norwegians, like
Uh-huh.
Norwegians discovered aliens. Like that would be a very big thing that like
Yeah.
for the country. So like, they pour a little bit of character into him in regards to that, but like it seems like I'm harsh on this movie and I'm like acting like there's nothing good, but I'm like seriously, watch it. Like a good chunk of this movie is just some of the most insufferable cliches of like, hey, like walking into a room or like something's on fire and again the bulk killing characters like there are so many scenes where like two or three characters get killed and I'm like I don't even know which ones died. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
and you said because you said, oh, it's cool to see how the two-faced one was, came to be, I guess. But I did not like that. For me, it made no sense how any of that scene occurred. Of just like
Oh.
it just kind of like flomping about, and then he just gets close to him and just kind of absorbs him, but not only halfway through, and then he just starts walking without fully absorbing him and pretending to be him. So it's just like half monster, half person. Did not understand at all why that was a thing. Because like
Yeah.
the implication in my mind when I was watching the original was they burned the monster while it was absorbing a human. That's why it's fucked up like that. But it's not. It like
Yeah,
it was it just did that. It just flunked about. I don't get it.
just yeah, it was weird too that it just like rubs against it. It just like it just goes on him and just like lays back and just is rubbing its face and then just like sort of takes him over, but not really. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of dumb.
And I thought it was weird as well. That ship is like huge, right? When they find the alien
Oh,
spaceship. And I was just like, what the hell? This is just underground. How did you find this? How is this like, because I thought it was like a lot of fucking, ice on it, and they just ended up like finding like it was like closer to the surface in the original, but it seemed like it was just like a huge fucking ship underground in a cave.
well, yeah. So that's what's so weird. Like I said, they don't do the thermite charges thing, which is really weird. Like they showed the footage instead of the original movie that they had to use thermites to get the ship out. And then I thought the implication in the original thing was always that the ship crashed, that like it couldn't use the ship, and then it got frozen when it tried to escape.
Yeah,
And then, but in this movie, the ship just works. And it's like,
yeah,
why
it
couldn't he
just
just put
turns
the
it on.
keys in and like just hit it back up and drive out? But like,
uh
because it has to make its own ship in the 82 thing. So
yeah,
like it's it's really weird that it just the third act just sees it just going back to its ship and just like
which
putting the
is
keys
again
back
why
in
it
the
felt so
ignition. I'm
much
like,
like Alien Covenant, especially they said just like, yeah, it's in the ship with the xenomorph. It's the thing. Whoa,
yeah.
it's so
Well,
stupid.
not to mention it's just so much more cliched. Again, just going into like the alien mothership and like defeating like it's the original thing didn't feel like that. And you can try to connect it here with this like lame version of the ending with the original movie where it's like, which one of the two is the thing, but it's like it again, like the whole earring thing that, trying to connect it. It's not clever enough. It's not enough to justify a movie like this existing because it doesn't bring enough to the table to even come close to holding a candle to the
Yeah.
original or like yeah.
And man, what a waste of Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She's one of my favorite actors. Uh, she deserves
Yeah,
better.
I don't know. She does all right. It's
I
I
mean, it's not
swear
her fault.
I feel like I'm being mean to this movie, but seriously, like I watch it yourself, I'm having trouble like coming up with stuff that's particularly praiseworthy. It's a really like it's
Mediocre movie.
very action heavy. Like
Yeah.
if you don't like the original thing and it was because you found it boring, this movie at least will just keeps the pace up the entire way through. Like I it's relatively short, but none of the intellectual exercise of watching the original thing is present in this movie. This is
Mhm.
not a movie where you're rewarded for paying attention to much of the details or the characters. It's just kind of it's a pretty generic alien sci-fi horror movie, like you said, very much in line with like the alien movies rather than the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's too much to talk about. We've already talked about a lot of the first movie, so maybe the second one doesn't deserve as much time spent on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going line by line, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that movie does
I
not
mean,
warrant that.
no, Jesus, though. Like, I feel like we've only talked for like 20 minutes about this movie.
We
It's like,
did. I don't know, man. It is. Uh it it just
are we
feels
being
like a movie that
fair?
doesn't
I
need
mean,
to exist. So everything it does is just like a pale imitation of the original at best. Like there
yeah,
isn't a scene
and
where you're just like, oh, that's a really cool scene. Because like the scene with them testing the blood with the hot needle in the original movie is so good. And then in this one, it's just like flashlight in the mouth to see if teeth feeling. If there is no teeth feeling, it doesn't actually mean you are a thing. It just means you might be. So it's just like, wow, that is very interesting movie.
yeah, and maybe part of that too. Like I was mentioning, like, and I was praising how good the premise of the original thing is. Maybe part of it is that like essentially by necessity they needed to copy the premise of the original movie, and
Hmm.
because of that, like there's not much else you can do other than make a worse version of the first movie. So, but I rough as it is to say, that's what this movie comes across as. It's
Yeah.
just it doesn't hold a candle and it doesn't as a prequel, it doesn't add anything that you don't just get in the original movie, because those details are fun and all. When you see them, you're like, oh, that's how that thing. But like something like Better Call Saul, like, not comparable to like a movie like this, but like that enriches the experience of watching Breaking Bad, because
Oh
you
yeah.
get like a sense of the characters and the stories that like came after the fact. Like there's not much of anything like that in this movie, where when you watch the 82 thing, you're going to think about the 2011 thing. Like seriously, like the axe, that's like it. It's like, because again, they don't even show the guy that slits his own throat and stuff like that. So it's
Yeah, it's
just,
all off screen, and we
yeah,
just see him frozen. It's like, oh, I guess he did that.
yeah. I would, if maybe there is a better version, like love with the director's cut or something like that, or like, and I do appreciate like the filmmakers behind this, because you can tell they really wanted to make this movie, but
Mhm.
it just didn't really work. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it then. I think we've talked about the thing and the thing enough for today.
I think so. That was good. We went into more detail than we usually do, which
Yeah,
I
even more
like.
detailed than when we talked about Godzilla minus one. Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
wow.
Worth it, man. It's worth it. Seriously. God forbid I'd hope you'd see the thing. I don't spoilers, by the way.
Yo, yeah, it's spoiler.
Yeah.
Uh,
Watch watch the thing. My God, it's an amazing film, and it's, yeah. Rewatch it if you've never seen it in a while. It's you might get something out of it that you didn't get before.
well, I did. As I said, I watched it a few years ago, like 3 years ago, and I thought it was, I thought it was really good, but it didn't like get much out of it personally. Now I just think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. So, yeah. Skip on the
Oh yeah.
prequel though. That's not necessary. Watch other Mary Elizabeth
Maybe
Winstead
maybe
movies.
maybe play the game, man.
Yeah,
Like I said, I low key might check that out now, because
you
I'm
should stream
curious.
that. That would be fun.
Yeah. God, I need to get into streaming again for sure. Been busy.
uh, all right. Well. With that, it's time for my recommendation. So Evan,
Ooh.
we just did a movie and its legacy sequel. Well, prequel, but you get what I mean. The term we use is legacy sequel. And I was thinking of another movie and its legacy sequel that we should watch. And I think you haven't seen this movie because it's not marked on your letterbox as watched. So I want us to talk about Train Spotting and T2 Train Spotting.
Ooh.
Both
I've
movies.
always meant to see those, man. Danny Boyle. Huh.
Train
Have you
Spotting,
seen?
I have seen the original. It is fantastic. My
Yeah.
dad loves it, so he's gonna love the chance to rewatch it with me. And I am excited to see the sequel because I've heard it actually is good and it's made by the same people who made the first one, so it's interesting. I've heard it's worthwhile. So yeah, Train Spotting.
Yeah, Danny Boyle, yeah, made Train Spotting 2, I believe, and he did the first movie. So
Hmm.
yeah, I heard the same thing. It it's funny because Train Spotting's a kind of a niche movie. It's like it's, not as well known as like other movies, and it's weird that it got a legacy sequel. Like what was that, 2018 or something? Like
2017, I
it
think.
was, yeah, it was fairly recently, and that was a while. Like it's an unconventional like legacy sequel, but I've heard good things about both, and I know
Yeah.
next to nothing about them, man,
Yeah,
other than
one
Ewan
of the best
McGregor.
things you
So
can do is watch the original without reading anything about it. It is a wild film. I love it a lot. And it seemed
oh,
like it was a big inspiration for some of my favorite TV shows as well. So, yeah.
gotcha. Train Spotting. All right,
Train
let's
Spotting, hell yeah.
Inter- interesting double feature. Let's do it.
Yeah. Now that we've passed spooky month, we're ready to talk about other things.
Yeah,
Those
get that
Nosferatu's coming out
brief,
soon. We're gonna need to go back into horror.
yeah, brief normal phase before the Christmas season, I suppose,
Oh
and
yeah, are
then
we
yeah,
gonna
like
do a Christmas thing?
Nosferatu.
Just Christmas movies for December?
I'll get at least one in there. I got a
we
good idea
well,
for a
we got
Christmas
like Die
recommendation.
Hard. Obviously, we're gonna have to do Die Hard. But other than that, I don't know. Nightmare Before Christmas. Should we have done that in October or?
That's a classic.
uh,
Took me a while to watch that movie, honestly, because I usually don't like Burton's movies, or at least as animated. I was worried that it would be like Paranorman, but that's that's such a great movie.
yeah. But yeah, folks, thank you very much for watching. We will catch you next week now, and yeah, see ya for Transpotting.
Catch you later, all.